Welcome to this second myofascial release practice. Today we're going to focus on the legs, primarily the upper legs, and we'll be working on the quadriceps on the front, a little bit through the IT band, the hamstrings, and the adductors on the inner thighs. So for this practice, you will need a foam roller. You'll also need a couple of myofascial balls, preferably in a tote bag or in a sock, and then one yoga block. So we're going to start maybe with the spiciest of all of the techniques, which is to work through the quadriceps. You can do this with two myofascial balls on a block potentially or on the floor, but I'm going to use the foam roller. This is my preferred way of working with them. So you're going to start by coming onto your hands and your knees, and we'll do one leg at a time. So I'm going to put my right thigh just below the knee there. Oh, sorry, just above the knee with the foam roller. And then bring the other knee up so I can put a little bit of weight through that other leg just to take some of the pressure off. And you can be on your hands here, or you can be down on your forearms. And I'm just going to start to slide nice and slowly the foam roller up. And I'm just working the first sort of half of the quadricep here. So just from just above the knee to about halfway up, working on the sort of front of the thigh here. Going nice and slow. So you could do this potentially on two myofascial balls on a block. And then just play a little bit with the angles. So I'm just going to start to move a little bit on the outer edge of the thigh, looking into the lateral quads there, and then also working a little bit more on the inner quad. And then find a spot you want to just kind of remain on there, bend the knee and straighten the leg a few times. If this feels too much, too sore, feel free to skip it. It's called a pin and stretch technique. So sort of pinning the muscle, the tissues, and then stretching them against that compression. And you can also bend the knee and just find a little windshield wiper. So now we're cross fibering and working against the grain of the tissues. And I'm going to release and start to work my way up now from the middle of the quad now towards the upper quad. A few times you can play with different angles here. Working the outer and then the inner quad. Always when working with the foam roller, I find these techniques that can be a little bit awkward initially, and then the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And maybe finding another spot that you want to work with. You can do a few of those bend and straighten movements. Maybe a little windshield wiper. I'm getting some good stuff. Okay, and then we're going to work a little bit more specifically on the outer quad. So I'm working now through the IT band. I'm going to start just above the knee and just start to work my way up. It's usually a more tender spot. You could definitely do this work at this IT band release, the foam roller at the wall. It's too much. And I'm just going to keep working my way up here towards the top of the outer hip. Getting into so it's right up close to the hip bone. And then we'll do a slightly different technique with the IT band here. Just turn face you. So same leg. I'm going to come into just a sort of sideline position and pop the foam roller underneath the IT band here. And then just looking for a tender spot here. And again, just bending and straightening leg. That's one option. If you want a little bit more intensity, you can sort of stack the legs and do this little scissoring action. Ooh, really spicy. And maybe just moving up or down, just depending on what you're noticing here. Great. All right. And then we'll come back to the IT band and the quads on that side in a moment, but let's go to the other side. So just starting with the foam roller now, going just above my left knee, other knee comes out in front, just finding a little movement, sliding up and down, and just playing with the different angles, turning the thigh in, turning the thigh out. Nice, slow, mindful pressure here. In particular spots, you can just do little tiny sort of pulsing movements. Some good stuff just above the knee. And again, bending and straightening the leg. And maybe finding a windshield wiper here. Great, and let's move up. So coming now a little bit higher, middle of the quad towards the top of the hip. So this would be a great sequence to do after a run or after maybe a lower body workout. You could actually also do this as a pre-workout warm-up. Good way to hydrate the tissues, prepare them for activity. I quite like this more as a recovery tool, personally. And maybe finding a spot. Oh, that's a good one. You'll know when you're on something that's helpful here. Stay within that window of tolerance. Chill, right brain. Okay, make sure you can breathe. That's the key. Okay, and then releasing, and let's go into the IT band on this side. I'm just going to work my way. Again, just starting just below the knee and just working my way up. So I'm on the sort of side of the thigh, using the other leg here as a little kickstand. IT band is a really thick, sort of fibrous band of connective tissue, and it's designed to be very robust and strong. So we're not trying to sort of break the tissues down or anything like that, but it can be helpful to just keep it nice and elastic and well hydrated, and particularly as it sort of transitions into the quadriceps. This can be really important for things like proper kneecap tracking, patellar tendon support as well. And then we'll just do a little different technique for the IT band. So just coming into your sideline position, and you can sort of bend and straighten the leg, find a spot that feels good to work through. And you can also stack the legs and do more of a like a moonwalk type movement here. Okay. All right, let's keep working with the foam roller, and we're going to work now into the hamstrings, and we're going to just work a little bit more broadly before we do some more specific work with the balls in a bit. So I'm taking the foam roller just below, just above the knees there under the hamstrings. I'm using my hands here to provide a bit of support. Just strip along the length of the hamstrings here. This usually isn't too intense. It's not as intense certainly as the quadriceps for most people. You can play with turning the feet out, working a little bit more on the outer hamstrings, right up to the sitting bone, and then also turning the thighs and feet in. I also like to just bring the hips down, lean into the legs here, and just do a little sort of shearing, nice and floppy with the legs, just getting some hydration and blood flow into the hamstrings. Build quite a lot of heat. You might feel this sense of heat in the hamstrings here. Sort of shear, keeping the legs really heavy so they're just shearing against the foam roller. Great. Okay, and then we're just going to use the foam roller for one more thing here, which is the inner thighs. So I'm going to come to a sort of sideline, semi-sideline prone position. I'm going to take the foam roller just above the knee and then slide the inner thigh along the length here. And again, I'm just sort of incrementally working my way up, getting right up towards the inner groin where the adductor muscles insert into the inner groin area. I'm just noticing where is it more tender for you. So I'm noticing for me, it's definitely in that sort of mid part. And again, you can find a spot there, maybe do a little bit of that pin and stretch work, bending and straightening the knee. And you can bend the knee and sort of windshield wiper as well, just lifting and lowering the shin. And just need a little bit more sort of pulsing work there. Great, okay, and then let's do the same thing on the other side. This technique you could do with two sort of toted myofascial balls placed on a block. I like the foam roller, this one. Just working my way up. Using the feedback here, the sensations from the foam roller to investigate the quality of the tissues and where do you feel like you need to spend more time. The beauty, I think, of this work is that over time we really get to know where we accumulate stress or tension. And you can really spend more time on the areas where you know you are experiencing more discomfort. And then always find a spot and bend and straighten the leg. And you can bend and windshield wiper as well. Great. Okay, now from here, releasing, and you can pop the foam roller away. I'm going to do a little more targeted work now with the myofascial balls specifically. So I'm going to take the balls out of their tote bag. I'm going to go back to the quadriceps. And we're working to 3 spots here. So I'm going to have the balls just above the knee, middle of the thigh, and then sort of just at the top of the thigh. So to come into this, I like to tuck the balls in one at a time. This first spot down right above the knee, again, can be quite tender. The knees will be off the ground. You can have the toes sort of, I prefer the toes tucked here. You can untuck the toes, back and tucked. And I'm just going to start with just taking a few breaths here. So just I'm already on a spot. It just feels pretty tender for me. So just taking some slow, deep breath. It's like a trigger point release for the patellar tendon that becomes the quadriceps. And then depending on what you're noticing here, you could do a little bit of rocking if that feels helpful. You could also bend and straighten one leg at a time. You can sort of stay up on your elbows for this, or come all the way down and rest your head on your hands. Feels better for your back. You could also bend both knees, and you can stay on the balls here and do a little movement. Just have a play. All right. And then I'm going to move the myofascial balls up. So I'm coming right up about halfway up the quads. And find a spot again that feels kind of helpful for you here. So right in the middle of the quads. Some people find a little bit more in the outer quads. So again, you can kind of see what you prefer here. Where do you hold tension? And again, you can be more still. Well, the technique that's quite nice for this one is something called a contract and relax technique. So you tighten your thighs, engage your quadriceps. That will push the balls away and reduce the intensity. Take a breath in, and then as you breathe out, relax your thighs, relax your quads, and let the balls sink in a little bit deeper. That's a particularly good technique if you're feeling a lot of resistance or finding it quite difficult to sort of relax into it. So contracting the belly of the muscle and then relaxing it. Do a few rounds like that. Again, if you can tolerate it. I'm just at my kind of edge of comfort zone here. Straighten the leg. You can also bend the leg and again find a little cross fibering. I feel like you're kind of going over speed bumps in your quads there. Okay, and then let's come up one more level. So I'm going to come up to the upper quad. And I'm kind of in the belly of the quad here. I know for me, I tend to need a little bit more towards the outer edge of the quad. So again, I'm just seeking a place here on that upper quadricep that feels helpful. Other techniques that are quite nice, so you can tuck your toes and do a little kind of push-pull and rock a little bit up and down. So my hope is with these practices, once you've kind of got a sense of the techniques, the different ways of working, you can really just, again, make this your own. Maybe a little rocking of the pelvis. Maybe bending and straightening the legs. Great. Okay, and then let's come away from there. And I'm going to take one ball now, do a little trigger point work on the adductors, the inner thighs, one ball and a yoga block. Whichever leg you want to start with first. This one, again, can be pretty tender. So if you are finding this is too much, you could put the balls in the tote bag and put both balls on the block underneath the inner thigh. And that will just take some of the intensity of this away. So I'm just using the ball, the single ball now to just do a little bit more specific targeted work. You could do anywhere on the inner thigh with this. I know for me, most of what I need to work on is around just above the knee. So I'm kind of just really just spending a little bit of extra time here. Again, you can do a little in and stretch. Oh, you find a good spot, just hold it. Deep breath. Circles. Just trying to get some blood flow. Again, remember, you can spend as much time as you like on this, but the majority of the benefits you'll get occur within the sort of first couple of minutes of a technique. So you don't need to spend hours and hours on this. And let's go for the inner thigh on the other side. always recommend to clients with this work, put on some music and just enjoy it as part of your routine. I quite like this work also in the evening. It's a really nice sort of wind down. We know that myofascial release tends to have a calming, down regulating effect on the nervous system. Good thing to do before bed. More circles or movement here. Maybe even just pausing if you find a good spot. Okay. All right, now we're coming into the hamstrings, and for this one we're going to work a little more targeted with 2 myofascial balls here, and I'm going to do both hamstrings at the same time. You could do one at a time, and you can also work with blocks here. I'm going to pop the balls kind of right in. I'm going right for the very bottom of the hamstring. So right at the hamstrings actually attach right into the sitting bones, the bones that we kind of sit on. And I'm going to take the legs out in a sort of straddle. This does not need to be a wide-legged forward bend or anything like that. Lean into the hands a little bit. And I'm kind of right up underneath the sitting bones. It'll feel a little tendony. So we're kind of working on the sort of tendons here, the hamstrings. And I'm just kind of rocking the hamstrings or the pelvis from side to side. Nice deep breath. I can also do a little bit of pushing, pulling through the feet. So I'm just sort of pumping the feet sort of forwards and back, creating a little rocking action here. And do one at a time. Just getting a bit of movement. But we know that tendons take a lot longer in terms of sort of repair and sort of tissue turnover, cellular turnover. So, and they don't have as much blood supply or oxygenation to the tissues as well, which is why they take a little longer to recover, and particularly sort of after an injury. So this work can really help with the sort of circulation of those tissues, blood flow, encourage some vascularization to the tissues, so help them repair and recovery. Now we're going to move the balls down, and I'm going to go about kind of maybe like an inch or 2 below the hamstrings there, and again lean in. Now for this one I tend to find I need to kind of push in my hands and lean forwards a bit more. You could sort of apply a little bit more pressure through one hand. Again, I'm doing a little cross fibering here. This also works particularly well done in a chair, and I would do this sort of one leg at a time. So just sort of pop the ball underneath the hamstring seated on a chair, and then apply pressure that way. And that can feel quite helpful. And do it again, a little bit of push pulling on the feet. Maybe. And then I'm going to move the myofascial balls down another layer. So I'm about maybe just kind of above the knees, an inch or so above the knees. Again, same thing. This one is usually a little harder to get some pressure in. So again, leaning forwards, use your hands to push some weight in. Use your hand just to create a little bit of like a sort of worrying sort of action to the tissues, just trying to get a bit of mobilization. Go one at a time. Another technique here with the block, kind of here, it just kind of helps to raise the leg up a little bit, which will give you more as well. So if you're finding that you're not feeling very much, this is another way of getting that. I find that particularly useful as I sort of come down the leg towards the lower part of the hamstring. Definitely feeling something there now. I can kind of pick the foot up a little bit more as well. Ooh, that gets that. You can do both sides of that, if you like. May or may not need to apply a little bit of additional pressure. This should never feel nervy. So if you do get some sort of nervous kind of tingling, sort of neural type sensations, obviously any pain, anything like that, back off, move the ball into a different spot. The sciatic nerve runs through the back of the leg here. You just want to avoid sort of stressing or irritating the sciatic nerve. Just moving the ball into a couple of different spots here. I can just feel that a little more love is needed on that lateral outer part of the hamstring. So again, be guided by what you're noticing. Okay, and then just to finish here, I'm going to take just the one ball and I'm going to come to, I can still see the position. I'm going to take the ball just kind of behind the knee. I'm not right up in the back of the knee, but just sort of about maybe a centimeter or two below it. And then I'm going to sort of keep the ball blocked into position by bringing the shin in and interlacing my fingers around the shin. You can also use your hand to sort of push your hips forward. So just looking for a compression here. This may be more calf for some of you or more hamstring. You can also do a little bit of rocking or moving here. So for me, I'm actually feeling this more as a calf release, but as I say, it can be quite a nice one for the hamstring as well. Hamstring and calf tendons sort of almost intertwine over one another. So the health of the calves and the hamstrings are very interconnected. Great, and then let's just go the other side. So again, one ball just a little bit below the knee, not right up in the back of the knee. There are some important blood vessels right up behind the knee, which we don't want to overcompress. And then I can sort of use my hand to sort of push my hip forward, so I'm getting more pressure there. Finding something that feels good. Doing a little bit of moving of the leg here. Breath. And then we'll finish with the IT band one more time. And again, it's just a slightly more targeted technique to show you with the ball and a block. And you take the ball onto the block, right onto the IT band. I tend to, with this technique, just because of the setup here, I find this works best for the IT band literally just above the knee. And again, this is can be quite an intense spot. So if you feel it's too much, put the balls in the tote bag and work with those on the block. And I'm just looking for, this is more for me, a trigger point technique. Once you've found something that feels kind of tender, be still, or just find these tiny little micro movements. I like these little pulsing, rocking movements on the IT band. And it's kind of just interesting to note the referral sensations you might feel. So for me, as I'm doing this, I'm feeling this all the way up into my lower back. So I can sense there's a connection here between tension in this part of my body and the lower back. Just kind of interesting. Breath. Much needed. All right, and then let's just switch to the other side. In this video, we've kind of mainly been focusing on the upper legs and the thighs. And the next practice, we'll look at the hips. So there are a couple of muscles that are sort of thigh muscles, but also very much kind of hip muscles. And there's a little bit of crossover. That's often never a bad thing, these muscles. Some of the biggest and most powerful muscles in the body do a lot of work. Finding a spot here, a couple more breath. You could also bend and straighten the knee. Breathe. Great. All right, and then relax and release. Great. I hope that practice has left your thighs feeling replenished. Maybe you can sense a little bit more circulation, blood flow, and heat in the legs. And I look forward to meeting you for the next practice. Take care.